Samuel and Deborah were not just graduates, they were the pride of their families. Samuel graduated with the second class upper in mechanical engineering from a federal university, while Deborah earned the same in microbiology from a reputable state university. They met during NYC, and by the time their service year ended, they had fallen in love, gotten married, and believed with every fiber of their being that the world would soon open its doors to them. They had brains, degrees, and ambition. What they didn't know was that Nigeria was preparing a rude welcome party for them, one filled with job rejections, unanswered applications, and promises that never materialized. They applied and applied. Job portals, company websites, referrals, church programs, even private WhatsApp links. Sometimes they will spend hours perfecting a CV only to receive a one-line rejection or worse, complete silence. Eventually, with two children and rent already breathing down their necks, they accepted underpaying jobs. Samuel became a junior technician in a small factory, earning barely enough to cover transportation. Deborah, with all her dreams of working in a pharmaceutical lab, settled as a school receptionist, where the owner constantly reminded her that there are 50 people ready to replace her. They didn't take those jobs because they were good. They took them because school fees must be paid and because hunger doesn't understand grammar or certificates. There was a time when some relatives and some church members used to dash them money, 10,000 naira here and 20,000 naira there. It used to help, but with the new government in place and a collapsing economy, everyone had become a manager of their own misery. People who used to send help now send only prayers and forwarded devotionals on WhatsApp. Even the usual, "How are you people managing?" stopped coming. Everybody was simply trying to survive. The salary barely lasted 2 weeks. The first week after salary day will be manageable. Foodstuff in the house, transport to work, and that will be the week they will cook with fish. But by the third week, hunger will start visiting with confidence. They stopped eating dinner sometimes so the children could eat. And when they ran out of food entirely, Deborah and Samuel would drink water and sleep on their bellies. As for transport, they became kings and queens of trekking. If you saw Samuel walking under the sun in his faded work shirt, you would never guess he once wrote a project that could solve real engineering problems. Deborah sometimes pretended to go to work early just so she could tread part of the way, rest under a tree, and then continued. But through it all, they heard each other. They quarreled majorly about money, about the children, and about whose turn it was to buy soap. But deep down, they knew the problem wasn't each other, it was the country. It was the system that could take brilliant minds and reduce them to shadows of their dreams. Still, they woke up every day, not because they had hope, but because they had children. And that sometimes is the only thing keeping people alive in this country. The need to stay alive for someone else. It was one Sunday after church when it really hit Deborah. She spotted her former classmate Tina, the same Tina who had repeated 300 level courses twice. She looked stunning, her skin glowed like she had been bathing in shea butter and peace of mind. Deborah forced a smile and waved, but deep inside, something collapsed in her chest. Tina wasn't working. Everybody knew that. But somehow, she looked like life was treating her better, like time had spared her from the brutal aging that stress brings. Deborah, on the other hand, looked nothing like her age. She was only 32, but the lines on her face had started drawing maps. The constant sun from checking, the sleepless nights of thinking, the emotional weight of providing for her kids with almost nothing, all of it had settled permanently on her face. Even the head tie she wore to church couldn't hide the tiredness in her eyes. Samuel noticed it too, especially during family functions. His younger cousins, who were still waiting for inspiration before applying for jobs, looked better kept than him. Their faces were smoother, their cheeks fuller, their eyes brighter. Some even joked, "Oga Sam, You don't they look like our daddy now? And he will force a smile, pretending not to feel the sting. But how could he explain that the stress of waking up at 5 a.m. every day to beat traffic, only to reach work and be insulted by a secondary school dropout supervisor was enough to age a man by 5 years? How could he explain the kind of tiredness that sleep doesn't face? Even when Deborah tried to touch up with cheap powder and lip gloss, her body betrayed her. Her neck was darker than her face. Her hands were rough from washing and scrubbing. She used to be beautiful effortlessly, but now even beauty had become an expense. Sometimes they would lie on their old mattress, too tired to talk, too broke to care, and too discouraged to dream. They had once walked into life with degrees and dignity. Now they were crawling through it with bills and brokenness. And all around them, people who did nothing seemed to be winning, or at least not aging like milk left under the sun. One evening, there was no light, no fuel, and no food except for leftover rice Deborah had managed to stretch with some crayfish and mangi. The children had eaten and fallen asleep on the floor beside the rechargeable lamp. Deborah sat on the edge of the bed, fanning herself slowly. Samuel was pulling off his shoes with tired soles that had walked too many unpaid kilometers. There was silence for a while. Then she spoke. Sam, how long are we going to live like this? He didn't answer immediately. He leaned back on the wall, exhaled deeply and closed his eyes. My dear, I ask myself that same question every single day. I am tired. Debbie, I am so tired. Deborah's voice was cracking at this moment. I went to the market today. Oil is now 2,300 naira per bottle. Bread is now 1,200 naira. Indomie almost 10,000 naira for a carton. Even ordinary pepper, they are now selling it like gold. She paused, blinking back tears. And the school sent a message today. School fees had gone up by 15,000 naira each, times 2 children. That's 30,000 naira extra. From where? From which salary, I beg? Samuel dragged his palm over his face and muttered under his breath. They want to kill us in this country. Deborah added, school fees, rent, food, transport, light bill. We are not even enjoying anything. And then they will still say parents should buy broom, buy markers for the school. Are we the government? She turned to him now. Samuel, something has to change. This life we are living like this is not working. This is not life. It is simply called survival. Samuel, firm but tired, said, I know. I swear I know. My head is full. I think every day. Maybe I should start looking for bricklaying work on weekends. Something to add to this job. Just anything. Me too. I have been thinking of learning hairdressing or soap making. At least I can do something on Saturdays to add some money, because this receptionist job is just enough to pay for transport and pad. They both went quiet again. The rechargeable lamp flickered. The heat in the room seemed heavier than before. Samuel said, do you know I sometimes pray for a miracle? Like maybe someone will just bless us with 500k to start a small business, or someone just saying, come abroad, make you work. My dear, I am tired of living from alert to alert. Deborah smiled tearfully and said, Sam, for me, I just want to breathe. I want us to get to the point in our lives where I will stop calculating things during bedtime. A point where I will no longer get unnecessarily angry because of lack. I want our children to eat sausage and not ask, Mommy, is this only for birthday people? He reached for her hand and squeezed it. My wife, we will find a way. I don't know how, but we can't keep living like this. Next month, I will look for side work, even if it's keke work after office hours. Me too. I will go and ask that woman at the salon down the road if she can teach me. I will find a way too, even if I have to sell popcorn or zobo after work. They both looked at the sleeping children, and Deborah whispered, "They didn't ask to be born into this mess. They deserve better, and we will give them better, one way or another, even if we have to bleed to do it," her husband added. They heard each other in silence. No fancy promises, no fake hope, just the bond of two tired people trying to wrestle life into submission. One humid Friday morning, while Deborah was squeezing into a crowded bus on her way to work, a broadcast message popped up in our church women's WhatsApp group. New loan scheme open for small-scale businesses. No collateral. Interest is low and payment starts after 6 weeks. Only for married individuals. Apply now because we have limited slots. She read it once, then again. Her heart began to beat fast. She immediately forwarded the message to Samuel with a short note. "Read this thing well, oh. It might be our way out." That evening, while the children were doing homework, they discussed about it again. "Samuel, should we try? I know it's risky, but we can't keep patching like this. This loan might just be our lifeline." Samuel sighed and said, "I don't trust loans, but the kind of hunger we are feeling lately. Well, let's try. If we fall trying." They applied the next day, 300,000 naira each. By some miracle, both applications were approved. For the first time since they got married, they saw 600,000 naira sitting in their accounts. No one screamed. No one danced. They just held hands and prayed. Then they went straight to work. Deborah remembered a widow who used to sell provisions in cartons, milk, spaghetti, baby diapers, and make good profit, but it crashed immediately her husband died. She called her and begged for mentoring. Samuel used his break time at work to scout locations. After 3 days of searching, he found it, a small corner space near a newly developing estate, just beside the borehole tap where crowd came to fetch water. No provision shop nearby, meaning there won't be competition. The rent was 90,000 for 6 months. They paid instantly and bought a wooden table and small shelves. Then they went to the market, bought cartons of noodles, sugar, milk, detergents, biscuits, baby food, and bottled water in bulk. They bargained hard and carried the goods with their own hands to avoid paying offloaders. By the next morning, Sandy's stores were open. People noticed immediately. Mothers buying baby milk, estate workers buying pure water, children buying biscuits, and most of all, trust. Deborah's warm smile and Samuel's polite manner drew people in. Prices were fair, items were clean, and they always had change. 2 weeks into the business was all it took. 2 weeks of sweat, back pain, zero rest, and living like hawks over their new venture. By the 14th day, Samuel was staring at the law book and did a double take. 228,000 naira profits in 2 weeks. He called Deborah. He was shocked. "Debbie, add up everything," he said. "We have made more than what both of us earn in a month put together." Deborah looked at him, her mouth open and her eyes wide. Then for the first time in years, they both laughed deep and unbelieving laughter. The kind of laughter that comes when you have been on the floor for so long and suddenly life gives you one small sweet lift. Deborah said, "Samuel, are you seeing what I am seeing?" "I am, oh, my wife. God is not wicked. He was just waiting for us to move." They didn't waste time. The next day, they added soft drinks. The day after baby wipes, people started calling Deborah Madame Wholesale and she bore the name with pride. Their clothes were still old, but their hope had found new skin, fresh, full, and fearless. Within a month, Sandy's stores became the beating heart of the estate. Customers now queued in the mornings and evenings. One woman even said, "If you are not buying from Sandy, are you even living in this area?" Deborah and Samuel were grateful, but they were also drowning in the workload. Every day began at 5:30 a.m. They would boil water, bathe the children, dress them for school, pack their food flasks and rush them to school. Then they would carry heavy cartons, mop the shop, and then arrange goods. Open by 7 a.m. sharp. From 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., they stayed on their feet attending to customers, calculating, restocking, arguing with wholesalers, recording debts, settling quarrels, and solving price issues. The process was repeated for 6 days a week. Sundays were for restocking, meaning that the store never really slept. At first, it was exciting, but soon the cracks began to show at home. The 7-year-old son Tife started wetting the bed again. The 5-year-old daughter Dara, who used to sing and play around the house, started sulking, hiding in corners, and refusing to eat. The children's homework started returning from school with red marks and not done remarks. Teachers began to send notes. "Please ensure Tife reads daily at home." Dara needs more parental guidance, but Deborah and Samuel had no time. They would get home by 10:30 p.m., sometimes later, find the children already asleep, their food half eaten and cold. There were nights Samuel would lift Tife from the mat, hug him and whisper, "Daddy is sorry, we are only doing this for you." But the boy half asleep would murmur, "We don't see you anymore." Deborah cried one night when she saw her daughter had drawn a stick figure family, only 2 children, no parents. When she asked her why, Dara simply said, "You and Daddy live in the shop now." It hit them hard, but not hard enough to slow down. The store was growing fast. They couldn't stop. Competition had started creeping in from another end of the road, and Samuel said they needed to cement their customer base, so they pressed on. One evening, as they locked up around 10:15 p.m., exhausted and barely able to speak, they saw their children sleeping on the couch again with their school uniforms still on and food untouched. Deborah's mother had already called to say gently, "These children need their parents, so money is good, but don't let your own children turn strangers to you." She remembered the words of her mother. She sat on the floor, picked up her daughter's sauce and whispered, "We are winning outside, but losing inside." Samuel sat beside her, staring into the space. "Maybe we need to hire help," he said finally, "or start closing earlier because this isn't what we dreamt of." They were torn between survival and sacrifice because they had asked for rain and now it was flooding their roof. One Wednesday night, the rain had poured heavily and the shop stayed open late as usual. By the time Deborah and Samuel returned home, the electricity was out and the children were curled up in the living room with lantern lights flickering over their tired faces. Tife was doing his homework by himself with his eyes red with sleep. Dara was hugging her knees, her face blank. They didn't even look up when their parents entered. Deborah sighed, took off her slippers and entered the room with a tired forced smile. "My babies, how are you all doing? Have you eaten?" No response until Tife looked up. His voice was small, almost shaking. "Mommy, when are we going to eat with you again? Not just eating food, but we want to also laugh with you and talk with you." Deborah froze. Samuel, who had just dropped the shop key on the table, looked up too. Tife continued, "You people are always tired, always angry or rushing. We don't enjoy you anymore." Deborah tried to chuckle it off. Tife, see, this is for your own good, okay? You eat good food now. You are not drinking Gary every day again, are you? Mommy, but I will drink Gary and be happy if it means you being around the more, he replied immediately. Samuel stood up, irritation rising. Tife, enough! Do you think money falls from the sky? If we don't hustle, who will pay your school fees? Who will buy you cereals and that cartoon bag you begged us for? But you were never here, Tife said again, his voice cracking. We are here, Deborah snapped, her voice sharper than she intended. We didn't abandon you. We are working to build a future for you and your sister. Do you think it's easy out there? The boy's face fell. There was a long silence. Then Dara, who had been quiet all through, stood and walked into the room. She didn't say a word, just quietly closed the door behind her. Tife looked down at his notebook and said, Sometimes, I wish we were poor and happy again. Deborah felt her chest tighten. Samuel swallowed hard but said nothing. They thought they were doing the right thing, fighting to provide, building a future and buying peace with hard work. But their child wanted presence, not just provision. And in that moment, both parents sat on opposite sides of the couch, wide awake, realizing maybe they hadn't just been absent. Maybe they had been slowly becoming strangers in their own home. But did they still change? Not at all. They kept on postponing it. The next week, around 10:40 p.m., the air was heavy, thick with heat and silence. The whole estate had already gone to bed. No dogs barking, no music from afar, not even the usual generator hum, just stillness. Deborah and Samuel dragged their tired bodies towards the front door, plastic bags in hand, noodles, eggs and a few fruits they had picked from the roadside vendor on their way back. Let's fry indomie for the children, Deborah muttered, trying to force her eyes open. I'm sure they've not eaten. Samuel just grunted. His mind was still on the numbers from the shop. But as they opened the door and stepped into their sitting room, something was off. I mean, very, very off. Inside the house felt still, quiet and too quiet. Their daughter's school bag lay on the floor. A plate of white rice and stew sat on the stool, cold, full, exactly how she served it as lunch before leaving. And then it hit them. The children were not there. Deborah dropped the food bags instantly. Tife, Dara, she called, her voice sharp. No response. She rushed into the children's room. It was empty. Samuel checked the bathroom, the kitchen, and found nothing. He came back, breathing heavily. They are not in the house. Deborah's voice rose. Where would they go to at this hour? Tife, Dara. But the house was still still and very quiet. She ran to the door, flung it open and stared into the darkness outside. No neighbor stirred because in that area, mind your business was the unspoken law. Every house was fenced. No one knocked on doors. No one opened gates for noise as people had their own battles. Deborah banged on one gate and screamed, Mamuche, please, have you seen my children? No answer. Samuel's hands were shaking. His lips trembled as he whispered, What if they ran away? God forbid, Deborah replied. God, she sat to the floor, crying. I left them too long. I left them for so long. Samuel looked at the food on the table untouched, exactly how his wife had served it before worked. It was the loudest message ever sent in silence. The next morning came. Deborah and Samuel didn't open the shop. In fact, they didn't even remember it existed. For the first time in nearly 8 months, the door of the wholesale business remained locked. By 6:30 a.m., they were already at the police station, their voices trembling as they filed the reports. 2 missing children, last seen the evening before. No notes and no witness. The officer scribbling down the reports looked tired already. Now which area? Harmony Close inside Sunny Hill, Deborah replied. Ah, that place where everybody defends like prison, the officer scoffed. Madam, you go hard oh. You sure say they no sleep for relative house? No, sir. We don't have any relative in the state. It's just us, Deborah cried, her voice breaking. They have never even gone out alone before. We don't let them. The iron is tongue. They never let them go out. Yet somehow they have been absent in every other way. The officers followed them back to the estate by 8 a.m., did a brief check of the house, looked under beds, behind water tanks, in the back bush and found nothing. Police drove around, knocked some gates, questioned a few Okada men, even went to the estate security post. Still, they found nothing. By 2 p.m., hope was drying like a leaking tap. The sun was cruel. Deborah sat on the steps of her front door, her wrapper loose and her eyes swollen. Samuel hadn't eaten. He hadn't spoken in even an hour. His mouth quivered with every car that passed, every bird that chirped. Every sound was a possibility and every silence a knife. The shop? Not even a thought. What was mourning when their legacy was missing? That evening, the police officers returned again. This time, less hopeful. No sign, no CCTV, no movement, and no neighbor was helpful. Oga, you and madam go just pray oh. If na pikin waka comot, they fit return when the day come. But if na another thing, here, he didn't finish the statement. They didn't want him to. By 6:45 p.m., the compound was quiet again, and this time it was not from hustle or business, it was from loss. A loud, deafening silence where laughter used to live. Deborah turned to Samuel with her voice like a ghost. Samuel, what if? What if they never come back? Samuel closed his eyes, and for the first time in his adult life, he wept like a baby, not because of hunger, not because of poverty, but because he had gained the world and possibly lost what truly mattered. It had been 8 days long, 8 days of fear, 8 days of waiting by the gates, 8 days of hoping to hear little feet running toward them again. Samuel had lost weight. Deborah hardly spoke. Their shop had stayed locked. The shutters were rusting already from abandonment and rainfall. Nobody cared about business anymore, not when their world had vanished. That Sunday morning, they were standing by the gate as usual, staring blankly into space when a tiny feet walked to them. They looked up. There, standing like a small prophet in cartoon pajamas and one oversized sandals, was a 6-year-old boy with biscuit crumbs in his mouth. He looked up at them with innocent eyes and said, Auntie, Uncle, your children are in that tall fenced house. I saw the man carrying them there on my way to go buy my biscuits that day. The man didn't see me, but he was checking everywhere before asking them to walk in. Samuel's heart paused. Deborah rushed forward, kneeling to his level. What did you just say? What did you see? Are you sure? The little boy nodded quickly. Yes, I'm very sure. Your daughter wore a yellow top and white leggings with puff-puff hairstyle, and the boy wore blue Spider-Man singlets. Deborah collapsed into tears. Samuel grabbed his phone immediately and called the divisional police officer. When they got to the station, the officers hesitated. The house? The one with tall brown fence and black gates? Yes, Samuel replied. But that man, one of the police officers said, he lives alone. I know him, he's very quiet and is always on laptop. I mean for business Zoom meetings. He's very polished. That kind man, no they even talk too much. Another police officer sighed. Oga, e get people when they very wicked, but they know they look wicked though. Evil has upgraded. These days, evil wear perfume and suits. With this, they moved out with 2 patrol vans. When they got to the house, it was serene as ever. Clean, quiet with fresh flowers by the gates. They knocked and he opened, wearing glasses and a Bluetooth earpiece on one ear. Officers, good evening, and how can I be of help to you? They introduced themselves, told him a complaint was made that some children might have been seen in his compound. His brow lifted, polite but firm. That's ridiculous. I live here alone. No visitors, no children. I work from home. You can check the compound if you like. They did. They checked everywhere. The living room was spotless. The bedrooms were fresh smelling with clean sheets. The backyard, not a single toy or clue. Samuel's heart was already breaking again. Just as they were about to leave, one of the officers, the same man who warned them about evil in clean suits, paused and said, Sir, I saw a very big freezer in your kitchen. Can you open it? The man blinked, pretending to be confused. My freezer? Yes, the one in the kitchen. The man scoffed slightly. Are you being serious right now? That's a violation of my... Sir, open it, the officer interrupted, his voice flat and heavy with meaning. The man laughed nervously. You can't just barge into someone's house and now say I should open my... Open it, Oga. I lost the key, he said. You what? I mean, I misplaced. Before he could finish that statement, wah! One resounding slap from the officers reset his memory. He staggered back, and from his back pocket fell a small silver key. The room fell into a horrible silence. Deborah already began to tremble. The officer took the key and walked calmly to the freezer, unlocked it, flung the lid open, and then Deborah screamed. Samuel fell to his knees and crawled like a blind man towards it. Inside the giant freezer, curled up like discarded toys, were Tife and Dara. Steve, lifeless, their skin pale, their limbs bent unnaturally and cold. 2 innocent and bright children now gone, destroyed and stored, hidden behind white towels and fake Zoom meetings. Samuel could not speak. His mouth opened, but only air came out. The man was immediately handcuffed, still silent, no emotion, a monster in a niche shirt. Samuel just stared, his eyes on the freezer, the one that should have held frozen meats, but instead had frozen everything he lived for. The moment Deborah saw them again, curled up like frozen food, her scream tore through the house like a blade. She clutched her chest, staggered back, and then collapsed. Samuel didn't even have the strength to catch her. It was the police officers that sprang into action. One of them rushed to check Deborah's pulse. Another supported Samuel before his head hit the floor. The third officer shouted for backup and an ambulance. The monster in the suit muttered, I just wanted company. I didn't mean to. Nobody heard the rest because one officer dealt him a slap so heavy that it broke the silence and replaced it with the angry murmur of shocked neighbors gathering outside the gates. The case went public. It was all over the news. He was tried in court and sentenced. The law took its course, but no law, no sentence, No punishment could bring Tife and Dara back. No justice could breathe life into their tiny lungs again. Deborah changed. She was never the same again. She rarely spoke. She would walk into the children's room and fold their blankets every morning like they were still alive. She kept their plates on the dining table and whispered their names during prayer time. She barely touched food. Sometimes she would hold her husband's hand at night and say softly, "Sam, do you think they called our names in there? Do you think they were saying, assuming our parents were always around or allowed us in the shop, we wouldn't have been in here?" This broke Samuel, and he aged 10 years in 6 months. He tried to stay strong for Deborah, but some nights he would sit outside looking up at the stars, tears slipping down his face like rain on a dry roof. He blamed himself. If only we hadn't left them alone. If only we came home earlier. If only. They never returned to that business. They sold the shop, moved to a quieter part of town, and began a small foundation in memory of their children, the Tife and Dara Safe Home project, focused on creating awareness about child protection and building trust among communities. They never had more children, not because they couldn't, but because a part of them had been buried in that freezer, and some things, once frozen, can never be warmed again. And for anyone who comes close to them, they will always say, don't ever be too busy to look at your children, because evil is never too busy to look for them. Hey, African Tales by Karma Tribe, how are you all doing? For me, I am doing just fine. What a story. I hope you learned one or two things from the story. If yes, let me get to read from you again in the comments. Before I leave here, I would like to say this. Dear parents, I know you are trying. You wake up early, you sleep late, you break your back just to provide, to protect, to keep the lights on and the food on the table. And for that, you are deeply respected. But in your quest to give your children a better life, please don't forget to give them yourselves. The world we live in today is not the same as the one you grew up in. It is darker, colder, more dangerous, and sadly, evil no longer wears scary faces. It often smiles, dresses well, and says the right things. That is why your presence in your children's life is more important now than ever. Yes, you must work. Yes, you must hustle. Yes, school fees, food, and rent don't pay themselves. But please, hear this with all the love and sincerity in my heart. Your children are your first and most sacred assignments. They are not interruptions. They are not too young to understand. They are not burdens, and they are your legacy walking on 2 feet. So make time for them. Talk to them. Know their fears. Know their friends. Know their online habits. Know their dreams. And above all, let them know you. Let them feel your love. Not just in what you give, but in the time you share. Because no matter how much you provide for your children, if something tampers with your relationship with them, no amount of money can rebuild it. Money can always be made, but with child's trust, once lost, is almost impossible to regain. Also, in this age of child predators and heartbreaking stories, I strongly advise this. Create a family password, a secret word or phrase known only to you and your children. Teach them that if anyone at all comes to pick them up, take them somewhere, or says your mom or dad sent me, they must first ask that person for the password. If the person doesn't know it, they should run, scream, or report to the nearest trusted adults immediately. Let this password be like a lock around their safety. It may sound simple, but that one word could be the thin line between life and unspeakable tragedy. Your job is not just to feed your stomachs. Your job is to feed their hearts, their minds, and their souls. They need your wisdom, your protection, and your affection more than they need your money. So, as you chase success, don't lose sight of your children because evil doesn't knock anymore. It slips in when you are not looking, and sometimes it hides behind a fence or a scream or even a smile. Stay present, stay prayerful, stay protective, and always remember your children are your primary assignments. If you fail in that aspect, then I can tell you that you have failed in all. Give the story a thumbs up. Don't get tired of sharing Karma's story. If you have not subscribed, you know what to do. Until I bring another exciting story your way, it's a goodbye from here, and God bless you.